Malik Turner thought he was invisible, a quiet black cybersecurity engineer just picking up his niece from school. But when two white officers slammed him to the ground and discovered drugs in his car, his life flipped overnight. What they didn't know, Malik is a deep-cover CIA agent, and they just framed the wrong man. Now, with his silence as his weapon and a courtroom as his battlefield, Malik is about to turn the entire system inside out. But how do you fight injustice when the whole game is rigged? If that question hits you deep, hit that like button and share your thoughts below. Now let's dive into the story. Malik Turner never made noise. He wasn't the kind to draw attention, not in a world that watched every move a black man made. He walked with the quiet purpose of someone who had learned long ago that safety didn't come from visibility. It came from precision, from control, from knowing when to speak and when not to. Most days you could find him parked in the far corner of the lot behind the data center off Pine Ridge Avenue, sipping his coffee black, listening to Miles Davis through wired headphones and checking 3 news sources before opening his laptop. He wasn't just a cybersecurity engineer, he was one of the best in the state. But few knew that. That's how he liked it. He kept his life small, his circle tighter. Every Sunday he visited his sister Denise and her daughter Zara, cooked for them, fixed leaky faucets, helped Zara with her science projects, and taught her how to breathe deeply before giving a presentation. That's the thing with Malik. He never raised his voice, but he made sure you heard him when it mattered. And in a city like Eastman, Georgia, that kind of quiet didn't go unnoticed. Somewhere across town, in a dimly lit office above the Eastman Police Department, 2 white officers, Cole Briggs and Sean Dempsey, were in damage control. A local reporter had uncovered evidence that suggested their unit had covered up excessive use of force in 3 separate incidents. The mayor's office was breathing down their necks. Public trust was slipping fast. What they needed was a clean takedown, something that looked righteous on paper, something they could show the press as a win, and more importantly, something that would shut everyone up. They didn't want a real criminal. They wanted optics. Sean was the first to say it out loud. "We need a suspect that doesn't talk back, doesn't lawyer up, and won't stir the pot too deep." Cole nodded, tossing a file on the desk. "How about Malik Turner lives in the South End? No priors, no records, nobody knows him." Sean scoffed. "You sure he's not too clean?" "That's the beauty of it," Cole said, tapping his fingers on the table. "No one pays attention to a quiet black man. He's invisible until we say he's not." And just like that, the wheels began to turn. At that very moment, Malik was in Denise's kitchen watching Zara chase their dog through the backyard. The girl was a whirlwind of laughter and bare feet, her braids flying behind her like little black wings. Denise leaned against the counter, arms folded, her eyes studying Malik the way only sisters can. "You good?" she asked. He smiled, but it didn't quite reach his eyes. "Yeah, just tired." "From work or from watching your back?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. She sighed. "You always were the quiet one, but lately..." "Malik, you act like the walls are listening." Malik looked down at his hands. Large, steady hands that once carried classified cables across war zones, that had typed code deep inside NSA bunkers, that now felt strangely exposed in a house that should have felt like home. That night, as he drove back to his apartment on the north side, his phone vibrated once, an encrypted message routed through 3 dummy networks before landing on his secure channel. "Final phase authorized, no errors allowed." He read it once, locked the screen, and exhaled. There was no going back now. Whatever this mission had started as it was reaching its final chapter. And somewhere between being an asset and being expendable, Malik had learned that success in his world didn't always mean survival. Across the street from where he parked a white sedan sat idle windows tinted dark. Inside, a man in a gray windbreaker adjusted the focus on a long lens camera, capturing each step Malik took as he entered the building. Another camera mounted 2 blocks away on a light pole zoomed in and recorded the license plate of Malik's car, its feed uploaded in real time to an unmarked database. And in the silence of a secure room somewhere beneath Washington, D.C., a file bearing Malik's name flashed red on a server marked active, unsupervised, and at risk. Malik didn't know all the eyes on him. Not yet. but he felt it like pressure behind the eyes, like the static hum in the back of your skull when something's not right. He set his keys on the table, walked to the window, and paused. He didn't pull the blinds shut. He just stood there, looking out, waiting. It happened in broad daylight, that kind of clean, open afternoon when nothing seems dangerous. Malik had just pulled up to Eastman Elementary, same spot, same time every Thursday. The street buzzed with the sounds of kids laughing, parents chatting, backpacks bouncing off little legs. And Malik. He was leaning against his car, arms crossed, waiting. Zara spotted him first. "Uncle Malik," she shouted from behind the fence, waving the drawing she'd made him. He smiled, small and warm, lifting a hand in return. Then everything snapped. A black, unmarked SUV screeched into the street tires, screaming like something out of a bad movie. Doors flung open. 2 white officers, Briggs and Dempsey, charged out with guns drawn. "Turn around." Hands on the car. Briggs shouted. Parents gasped. A few pulled their kids back. Someone dropped a coffee. Zara stopped mid-step, frozen, her drawing fluttering to the ground. "What is this?" Malik asked, his voice steady but confused. "There's a child here." "Shut up, hands where I can see 'em!" Briggs barked again, louder, more for the crowd than the suspect. Malik didn't move right away. Not in defiance, just in disbelief, and that pause was all the excuse they needed. Briggs grabbed him by the collar, slammed him onto the hood. Dempsey yanked his arms back hard and fast. Zara screamed. "Uncle Malik!" She ran toward the car, but a teacher caught her just in time. "Stay back, honey, stay back," the woman said, pulling her in. Malik's cheek scraped against the metal. A gun pressed into his neck. "You got no idea what kind of day you just stepped into," Briggs hissed near his ear. "I'm not resisting," Malik said through gritted teeth. "You're breathing, that's enough for me." Briggs shoved him harder. Then came the setup. Dempsey popped the trunk. A flashlight clicked on. 30 seconds later, he called out, "We got it!" Bag of coke in the trunk. Glock under the seat, the crowd murmured. A few pulled out their phones. "Not here," Briggs growled under his breath. "Not now." He stormed across the street toward a man filming. "Delete that. Right now." "Sir, this is a public street," the man started. Briggs got in his face. "Then publicly delete the goddamn video or I'll make you part of the case." The man hesitated. The phone dropped. Screen went dark. But what Briggs didn't see, what no one saw, was Zara huddled in the back seat of Malik's car, her little hands shaking as she held up her iPad. She didn't understand it all, but she knew something was wrong. Uncle Malik never broke rules, and he never looked that angry or that calm. She hit record, and outside the scene finished playing out. Malik was dragged to the SUV, wrists zip-tied, shirt ripped. A reporter already tipped off arrived just in time for the statement. Suspect was found with an unregistered firearm and narcotics in a school zone, Dempsey said to the camera. "We acted swiftly to protect the children. No further comment at this time." Malik didn't say a word. He didn't need to. The silence was heavier than shouting. He looked up from the back of the SUV, his eyes locked with Briggs's. "You sure you planted everything?" Malik asked quietly, almost too soft to hear. Briggs blinked. For just a second, something tightened in his jaw. "What'd you say?" I said. Malik leaned forward, voice even. "You better be sure." The door slammed shut before he could finish. By evening, the story was everywhere. Black suspect arrested at elementary school. Drug trafficking allegations under investigation. News anchors used words like dangerous armed potential threat. They showed the mugshot, the zip ties, the blood at the corner of Malik's mouth, but not the footage from Zara's iPad. No one knew it existed yet, not even Malik. Denise found out the way no sister should by watching the 6 o'clock news. She dropped the remote, burned her hand on the stove. Zara hadn't come home. No call, no explanation. Her knees hit the kitchen tile before the panic fully set in. Across the city, Briggs sat at his desk reviewing the body cam footage. Edited, of course. Sanitized. Dempsey leaned against the doorframe, arms folded. Guy never even flinched. Briggs didn't look up. "He will. Trust me." But even as he said it, his fingers tapped a little too fast against the desk, because something in Malik's eyes stuck with him. That wasn't the look of a guilty man. That was the look of a man waiting for the next move. A man playing chess while everyone else was throwing punches. They kept him in interrogation for 6 hours. No food, no lawyer, Just silence and a pair of unblinking eyes behind a one-way mirror. 3 officers took turns trying to chip away at him. One played kind, the next cruel, the last just loud. But Malik Turner didn't flinch. He didn't beg. He didn't deny. He simply watched. He sat still, arms resting loosely on the table, his eyes following the flicker of the overhead light like he was waiting for something else to start. The first officer leaned in. "You know we got you dead to rights. Gun, drugs, school zone, that's 20 to life." Malik blinked once, said nothing. Another stepped in. "You cooperate, you walk. We can clean this up. Just tell us what you were doing there." Still nothing. Not a nod, not even a glance toward the mirror. The third officer tried the threat. "You're not a big man in here. You keep acting like you're smarter than us, you're gonna end up forgotten in a cold-ass cell with no daylight and no name." Malik finally moved not to speak but to fold his hands. Calm. Like a man counting seconds, not fearing outcomes. Outside the room, Briggs watched through the glass. He didn't like it. Something was wrong. Most guys screamed, denied, lashed out. This one, he just waited. Back in the holding block, they put Malik in a single cell. Or so they claimed. 15 minutes later, the door opened. A broad-shouldered man stepped in, rough face scars, old and deep with that twitchy energy of someone trying too hard to act like he belonged. The stranger didn't sit right away, just paced a bit, then spoke, voice thick and slow. "Word is you got caught with a stash big enough to stir attention. Real bad timing for you, huh?" Malik sat on the cot, leaning forward slightly, silent. "You some kind of hot shot. Think you're gonna flip this. Maybe you're not scared now, but this place, it'll chew you up." Malik kept staring at the wall. The man scoffed. "You hear me, ghost boy, I'm talking to you." Still nothing. Not a twitch, not a blink. The silence stretched too long, unnerving. The man backed off, muttered something under his breath, and after a few more minutes, the guards pulled him out. Malik never turned his head once. Elsewhere, in a dimly lit back office, Briggs sat at his desk, nursing a glass of whiskey that wasn't doing its job. Dempsey was hunched over a laptop, typing fast, frustration thick in the room. "Got anything?" Briggs asked. Dempsey nodded slowly, then turned the screen. "Yeah, I got nothing." "Which is something." Briggs frowned. English Sean. No digital footprint. No Facebook. No Instagram. No work history that checks out. The tech company he listed doesn't even show him on payroll. Emails bounce. No driver's license until 5 years ago. Briggs set his glass down hard. "That's impossible. He has a niece, a sister, a house." "He has a cover," Dempsey said flatly. Briggs stood up. "So what are we dealing with?" "I don't know," Dempsey admitted, "but if this guy is who I think he is, we didn't arrest a suspect. We lit a match we don't know how to put out." Back in the detention wing, a tray slid under Malik's cell door. Cold food. Unappetizing. But tucked between the napkins, folded so tightly it looked like nothing at all, was a scrap of paper. Malik unfolded it slowly, eyes scanning the brief message. "Maintain silence. Phase B in motion. Await signal." He folded the note again, slipped it into the lining of his shoe, and sat back against the wall. No reaction. No smile. Just readiness. This wasn't a setback. It was part of the route. Across the city, Denise was unraveling. She'd spent the entire day on the phone, police stations, local news advocacy lines, lawyers she hadn't spoken to in years. No one wanted to touch it. No one gave her more than vague words and bureaucratic transfers. Zara sat curled on the couch, clutching her iPad like a shield. Her face, pale eyes, far older than they had been that morning. Then, in a quiet, desperate moment, Denise remembered a name: Marcus Bell. A former civil rights attorney turned reluctant advocate, Bell had helped someone she knew years ago, someone the system almost swallowed. Her hands trembled as she dialed. The phone rang once, twice, 3 times. Then a deep voice answered. Bell. She didn't stammer, didn't cry. She simply whispered, "Please, we need your help." There was a pause on the other end, a long one. Then he replied, "Tell me everything." And in that moment, something shifted. Because Malik Turner wasn't just playing defense anymore. He was about to flip the entire game. It started with a quiet click. Nothing dramatic, just the soft sound of an iPad screen unlocking. Zara had been holding it for days, like it was something sacred. No one had asked what she saw. No one thought to. But that night, while Denise reheated leftovers, neither of them would eat. Zara climbed into her lap and opened the video. Uncle Malik didn't do anything, she said softly. Denise barely heard her until she saw the screen. The video began in silence. The school sidewalk, a white SUV, then the chaos. Briggs shouting. Malik being slammed against the hood. Zara's own voice screaming his name, and the camera shaking wildly in her tiny hands. But it caught everything. The planted bag in the trunk. The gun slipped under the seat. The smug look exchanged between the two officers when they thought no one was watching. Denise stared at the screen like it was a live wound. She couldn't blink, couldn't breathe. "Oh my God," she whispered. "They set him up." And for the first time since the arrest, she didn't feel helpless. She felt fury. Across town, ADA. Claire Monroe leaned over a long conference table in a locked evidence room. The lights were dim, but the laptop between her and Briggs glowed bright. They were reviewing body cam footage, or what remained of it. "I trimmed the audio from the moment Dempsey opened the trunk," Claire said, fingers tapping quickly. The angle was off, and his glove slipped. "We don't need that kind of ambiguity." Briggs nodded. "And the school camera, blurred background. We'll argue it's too low res to confirm anything. Besides, the public already has their story. Clean arrest, dangerous man. On school grounds, they won't ask questions." He gave a tight smirk. They never do. But someone had questions. Officer Nina Alvarez had been at the scene that day, but not close enough to intervene. She was young, Latina, low on the ladder, the kind of officer who was expected to follow orders, keep her head down and never make waves, except she couldn't sleep. The next morning, she requested access to the archived body cam footage. Just curiosity, she claimed. Just paperwork. No one looked twice. But she did. She looked at everything, frame by frame, and she saw it. The glitch. The jump cut. The moment when the footage lost 10 full seconds, the exact 10 seconds when Dempsey leaned into the trunk. She pulled the original file from the backup server and quietly saved it to her personal flash drive. No edits, no filters, just the raw, ugly truth. That night, her mailbox was stuffed with a sealed envelope. No name, no return address. Inside one sheet of paper, "We know what you copied, transfer request already filed." Nina stared at the page, her throat dry. But she didn't throw the flash drive away. She slipped it into a hollowed-out book on her shelf, To Kill a Mockingbird, and sat in the dark for hours, heart pounding like a drum. Elsewhere in a small visitation room at the detention center, Marcus Bell finally came face to face with Malik. There was no handshake, no small talk, just eye contact. Long, measured. "I've read everything," Marcus said. "I believe you're innocent." Malik leaned forward, calm, focused. "I don't need you to believe me," he said. "I need you to help me take them down." Marcus blinked. "You're not just trying to walk out of here. I already have a way out," Malik said simply. "But if I leave without exposing them, they'll just bury the next man. And the one after that." Bell leaned back, studying him. "You're not what they think you are." Malik gave a half smile that never reached his eyes. "They'll find out, just not yet." As Marcus left the room, he didn't feel like a lawyer. He felt like a chess piece being moved, and for once that didn't bother him. Because something about Malik Turner felt inevitable. Not a victim, not a target. A trigger. Back at Denise's apartment, Zara's video was uploaded to 2 secure folders. One on Marcus's encrypted drive, the other on a cloud link set to auto-delete if anyone else tried to access it. At the same time, Nina Alvarez sat alone in her car outside a 24-hour diner debating whether to hit send on an email addressed only to herself with the raw body cam footage attached. She didn't know what she was waiting for. Courage, permission. Eventually she hit send, then turned off her phone and drove home in silence. Neither Zara's clip nor Nina's file were enough on their own. One showed a child's shaky recording, the other an internal record that no court had yet seen. But together they formed a shape, not a full picture, not yet, but a silhouette of the truth. A truth waiting to be lit. And somewhere in the quiet corridors of power, Malik Turner was already 3 moves ahead. Marcus Bell had been in courtrooms long enough to recognize when a man was playing defense and when a man was laying traps. Malik Turner, from the moment they met, wasn't pleading for freedom. He was preparing for something. And that changed everything. Marcus didn't waste time. That afternoon, he began weaving a legal net not to untangle the case, but to wrap it tighter to buy time to control the board to mask Malik's real identity from anyone who might be watching. At first glance, the case strategy looked conventional. Motions for discovery. A quiet request to seal Malik's employment records citing federal clearance. No fanfare, no press, just chess. And in chess, the first move is never the most important. It's the quiet ones after the ones no one sees coming. Later that evening, Marcus met Officer Nina Alvarez in the corner booth of a 24-hour diner off Highway 29. She was already there, hoodie pulled over her hair, sipping lukewarm coffee with both hands. When he slid into the seat across from her, she didn't greet him. She just slid a small flash drive across the table. "You didn't get this from me. Marcus didn't touch it. They threatened you." She laughed, but it wasn't funny. "Someone moved my garbage can last night. I live alone. Nobody else touches that bin. Then this morning my name was on a transfer list to a precinct 3 counties away." Marcus narrowed his eyes. "Have you told anyone else?" "No, and I won't. I saw the original footage. I saw what Briggs and Monroe cut. That's not a mistake. That's a cover-up." He finally picked up the drive, tucking it into his inner coat pocket. "You just became very valuable," Marcus said quietly, "which also means very vulnerable." Nina looked up, her eyes tired. "I know." Meanwhile, inside the police station, Briggs stared at his computer screen. An email had popped up 5 minutes ago from an address that didn't exist 30 seconds earlier. No subject. Just a single line of text in the body. "Zara knows. You know what we do with loose ends." His hand hovered over the mouse. He reread it. Then again. And again. Behind him, Dempsey walked in, tossing a folder on the desk. "Court wants you to prep for the hearing next week. They're asking questions about the chain of custody." Briggs didn't respond. "Briggs," he finally turned, voice low and sharp. "We missed something. That little girl. She saw more than we thought." Dempsey frowned. "What are you talking about?" Briggs stood. "You and I need to talk, off record." Across town, in a small park where innocents used to feel safe, Denise watched Zara chase pigeons across the sidewalk. The girl's laughter echoed, but Denise couldn't smile. Not after the email. Not after the way Marcus's voice had dropped when he said, "If she has that footage, she's a target." That's when she saw him. A man, standing too still at the far edge of the trees, hands in pockets, not watching the kids, just waiting. Denise called out. "Zara, come here, baby." Zara looked confused, but jogged back. The man took a step forward. Denise's heart slammed into her ribs. She pulled Zara close and dialed 911, voice tight-clipped, trying not to panic. "There's a man following us, Northwood Park, please." The dispatcher's tone was smooth. Too smooth. "We'll dispatch someone shortly, ma'am." She waited. 5 minutes? 10? Nothing. When she looked back, the man was gone. Denise didn't move for a long while. Just held Zara tight, whispering, "You're safe, baby. I've got you." But inside she didn't believe a word of it. Back at the detention center, a guard appeared at Malik's cell. No words, just a folded document and a short nod. "Turner, you've got a hearing in 2 days." Malik read the form. Pre-motion, routine. But his eyes sharpened. This was the first move, finally. When the guard left, Malik sat back down on the edge of the cot. He reached into the heel of his boot, retrieved a paper-thin note, and read it once more. "Phase B is yours. Proceed as needed." He folded it back with care, then closed his eyes, letting his breath slow. This wasn't about escaping a sentence. This was about bringing down the ones who built the cage. The courtroom was colder than it should have been, not just from the air conditioning humming overhead, but from the weight of what was about to unfold. Malik Turner sat in silence, wrists bound, eyes steady. No nerves, no fear, just calculation. Across the aisle, Ada Claire Monroe stood poised, every hair in place, every sentence rehearsed. To the gallery, she looked like justice incarnate. But Malik knew better. So did Marcus Bell, Your Honor. Monroe began. The prosecution submits Exhibit A body cam footage from Officers Briggs and Dempsey during the arrest of Malik Turner. As you'll see, the footage clearly captures a weapon and narcotics in Mr. Turner's vehicle recovered during a lawful stop. Judge Pierce gave a nod. The footage played. It was seamless, too seamless. No audio stutters, no missing frames, just a clean, damning narrative. Briggs was calm. Malik was silent. The gun conveniently placed. The drugs almost glowing in the sunlight. For someone who didn't know better, it looked definitive. Marcus leaned forward as it ended. Ada. Monroe. "May I ask when this footage was last modified?" His voice was casual, but his eyes weren't. Monroe didn't blink. Chain of custody was maintained. The footage is original. Marcus rose. And yet he said, walking slowly toward the screen, if you match the timestamp on the footage with the school's exterior camera, the frames don't align. There's a 9-second discrepancy. Would you care to explain that? Pierce raised an eyebrow. Monroe answered smoothly. The school's footage is at a different frame rate. Irregular syncing is common. Marcus nodded as if conceding. Then let's talk about the anonymous tip your officers claimed led them to Mr. Turner's location. Who filed it? Briggs shifted in his seat. Monroe replied quickly. We've sealed the informant's identity. Of course you have, Marcus murmured, pacing. But was there ever a real person or just a voice on a line no one can trace? Briggs finally snapped. Are you suggesting we fabricated an entire call log? I'm suggesting, Marcus said slowly, turning that your department created a narrative first and then scrambled to fill in the details. And that's a very different thing. There was a hush in the room, the kind that creeps into church pews before someone stands up to confess. In the second row, Zara sat quietly beside Denise, clutching something in her hand. Denise hadn't noticed it at first, the small USB drive. Zara leaned in. Uncle Malik said, always tell the truth. Even if it's scary, she whispered. Is now scary enough? Denise didn't speak. Just took the drive, pressing it between her fingers like a prayer. When the recess bell rang moments later, she made her move, slipped the drive into Marcus's coat as he leaned to take a call. She didn't even have to say a word. Minutes later, court resumed. Your Honor. Marcus said, standing with calm urgency. I've just received new evidence that directly challenges the prosecution's account. However, this footage contains a child witness. For her protection, I request it be shown here in the courtroom, sealed from public broadcast. Monroe opened her mouth to object, but Pierce beat her to it. Granted, play the footage. The lights dimmed. It began with shaking hands. A child's eye view. But the clarity was undeniable. Zara's iPad had caught everything. Briggs planting the bag. Dempsey sliding the gun. Their quiet exchange. No one's watching. And then Malik's face pressed into the pavement, unmoving, but eyes open, watching. The courtroom was still. No gasps, no whispers, just silence. Pierce finally cleared his throat. ADA Monroe, would you care to respond? She stood, her lips parted, but nothing came out. Marcus didn't gloat, he didn't smile. He simply sat down. Pierce looked from the screen to Malik, then to Briggs, then to the now frozen image of a child's small hand gripping her tablet while her uncle was being framed outside her school. This hearing, Pierce said, his voice measured, is adjourned until further notice. Court is in recess. The gavel fell like a gunshot. Malik didn't move, just let out one slow breath. Outside the courthouse, the press waited for a statement, but none came. Inside, justice hadn't been served. But for the first time, the illusion cracked. The storm didn't wait this time. By the next morning, the courthouse was surrounded not by barricades, but by questions. Reporters hounded ADA Monroe outside the building, cameras flashing, voices overlapping. Did the police manipulate body cam footage? Why was the child's recording not submitted earlier? Is the DA's office protecting corrupt officers? No answers, just forced smiles and rushed exits. But inside, things were already cracking. Officer Nina Alvarez was the first to feel the blowback. She didn't get a meeting, didn't get a warning, just a printed memo shoved into her locker. Suspension effective immediately. Breach of protocol pending review. When she called Marcus, her voice shook. They didn't even let me clear my name. They don't want the truth cleared, he said flatly. They want the silence. Marcus filed for emergency protective status that same day. For Alvarez, for Zara, for Denise. Even if the court moved slow, the paper trail mattered. It would make them think twice. At least he hoped so. But the other side wasn't waiting on paperwork. That night inside the jail, Malik was moved without explanation. The new wing was quieter, darker, fewer guards. He'd been in war zones that felt safer. At 1:48 a.m., a new inmate was thrown into his cell, thick neck scars like a roadmap, ink trailing down both arms. No words, just stillness. Until the lights dimmed. Then came the attack, fast, brutal, meant to injure, not kill. But Malik wasn't just a target. He was trained. He dodged, countered, pinned the man with precision. One move. One shift of weight. The man hit the wall hard, slumping, winded. Malik backed away, breathing steady. He looked down a tattoo near the man's collarbone. A jackal wrapped in barbed wire. Cartel. The message was clear. Back in the city, Marcus returned to his car after meeting with a civil rights attorney. A plain white envelope was tucked under the windshield wiper. No return address, no logo, just a single line inside. Drop the case, protect your sons. He stood in the street for a long time holding the letter, heart pounding in a way it hadn't in years. That night he didn't go home. At 10:36 p.m. his burner phone buzzed. He answered without thinking. Bella voice snapped sharp, rushed familiar. Ada Claire Monroe. They just threatened my sister, she said. She doesn't even live in this state. What do you want from me? He asked. To know how deep this goes, she fired back. Because I'm starting to think we're not cleaning up a local mess. We're sitting in the middle of something federal and dirty. He said nothing. Claire didn't wait. If this case explodes, she said they'll let us burn first. You had a choice, Marcus replied. Her voice dropped. Not anymore. Click. Inside the courthouse, the walls were thin and getting thinner. Reporters were whispering names they weren't supposed to know. A judge had privately requested armed escort, and someone from the governor's office had just booked a private lunch with the attorney general. Things were moving, too fast to stop, but the quietest warning came from Malik. When Marcus saw him next, face still bruised, he leaned across the glass and asked the only question that mattered. Was it them? Malik didn't answer right away. He just said tell Alvarez to leave town, because this isn't about justice anymore. Marcus's voice dropped. Then what is it? Malik's eyes didn't flinch. This is a system trying to save itself by any means necessary, and somewhere in the dark someone else was watching. Because collapses never start in headlines. They begin in silence. Then they roar. The courtroom felt strangely quiet that morning. Not in volume, the gallery was full. Reporters lined the walls, a buzz of murmurs rippled through, but in energy. Something was coming and everyone could feel it. Malik sat at the defense table calm as always, but Marcus knew better. He could see it in the way Malik's hands rested on the table, not tense but ready. Judge Pierce entered, adjusted his glasses, and looked directly at the defense. Mr. Bell, are you prepared to proceed with the next phase of your motion? Marcus stood. Yes, Your Honor, but my client would like to address the court directly. Pierce looked skeptical. Is that advisable? I believe Marcus said evenly it's overdue. The room shifted as Malik rose. He walked to the stand, not rushed, not hesitant. Then he looked up, not at the judge, not at the prosecution, but at the people watching. And for the first time since this began, he spoke with full weight. My name is Malik Turner, but that's not all I am. He paused, let the silence settle. For the last 3 years, I've worked undercover with the Central Intelligence Agency, tracking a money laundering network that operates between local law enforcement judicial offices and a cartel known as the Black Sun Syndicate. Gasps. Audible. One woman in the front row dropped her pen. My arrest, Malik continued, was not a mistake. It was an attempt to eliminate me before I could report what I found. The drugs were planted, the gun was staged, and the people responsible sit in this very room. The entire gallery erupted in stunned voices, but Judge Pierce's gavel slammed down hard. Before he could speak, the courtroom doors opened. 2 federal agents entered, followed by a woman in a gray suit and quiet authority. Catherine Morrison. She didn't announce herself. She simply approached the bench and handed a sealed folder to the judge. Judge Pierce, she said calmly. Under Executive Order 684B, this courtroom is now under federal jurisdiction. I am Catherine Morrison, lead counsel for the CIA's internal operations. What Mr. Turner just stated is true, and we have the documentation to prove it. Pierce opened the file. Read, then went pale. Outside, the chaos began to grow. Unmarked SUVs surrounded the building. Uniformed FBI agents posted at exits. One court officer tried to slip out a side door. He didn't make it. Inside, Monroe stood frozen. Not with guilt, but calculation. She turned sharply to leave, maybe to run, but stopped short. Her face drained. A sharp sting hit her neck. She staggered, knocked over a chair. Gasps again, but this time in panic. Get a medic, someone shouted. Marcus rushed forward as Monroe dropped to the floor, convulsing slightly, eyes wide. Her lips moved as if trying to speak, but the words didn't come. Catherine knelt beside her, checked the pulse, looked up. Poison, she said flatly. Fast acting. It's cartel. Is she going to die? Marcus asked. She won't, Catherine answered. They wanted to silence her, but not kill her. Not yet. Malik stood still, watching Monroe fight for air. She was playing both sides, he said quietly. Wasn't she? Catherine looked at him. She passed intel to us 3 months ago. Thought she could control the game, but she was just another piece. Down the hallway, agents detained Judge Pierce. He didn't resist, just looked tired, worn, like he'd known this day might come and had hoped it wouldn't. Back in the witness lounge where Malik had been held between testimonies, the air was different, too still. Marcus was the first to notice. The coffee cup on the table was steaming, but no one had been there since dawn. He froze. Malik stepped back, but the moment he spoke, the door slammed shut behind them. A click. Mechanical. Gas started to hiss from the vents. Marcus shoved the table over. Malik had already ripped his jacket sleeve, pressed it to his mouth. They moved together, fast-trained, focused. The emergency latch was jammed, locked electronically. Malik scanned the ceiling, found the sprinkler head, grabbed a chair, and smashed it upward. Smoke alarms, water, chaos. The door burst open seconds later as agents rushed in. Someone had tried to end it right there in the heart of the courthouse, but they'd failed. As paramedics wheeled Monroe out and agents led half the court staff away in cuffs, Marcus stood in the hallway, drenched, breathless. He looked at Malik. "You just declared war." Malik looked back. "No," he said. "I just exposed the truth." And behind them, the courthouse didn't feel like a place of justice anymore. It felt like a battlefield. 3 weeks had passed since the courtroom fell silent, and yet across the city, nothing felt quiet. Headlines didn't scream, but they didn't need to. Case files reopened, officers suspended. The justice system itself was under investigation. Over 30 convictions linked to Judge Pierce's bench were being re-examined. Patterns emerged, evidence tampered with testimonies, coerced defendants disproportionately black and poor. Some officers were arrested. Others disappeared before the subpoenas ever reached them. And through it all, Malik Turner remained unseen. He declined interviews, ignored calls from journalists, refused any formal commendation from the agency. When asked if he'd make a statement, he simply told Director Morrison, "I didn't do this to be known. I did it so no one else would be forgotten." Then, like vapor, he vanished quietly without ceremony. But not everyone faded away. Officer Nina Alvarez, once pushed to the margins, had not only been reinstated, but promoted. She now headed a newly formed internal investigations unit designed to root out systemic corruption from within. Appointed by the Justice Department itself, she returned to the very halls that once tried to silence her. Marcus Bell was there the day she took the oath. He watched her sign the final document with steady hands. "They're not going to like you for this," he warned gently. "I didn't come back to be liked," Alvarez replied, eyes fixed on the courthouse doors. "I came back so little girls like Zara won't grow up afraid of people in uniform." Across the city, Judge Harold Pierce stood trial for taking bribes from cartel-connected officers. Wire transfers, cash exchanges, even handwritten notes all laid bare. His rulings, once thought firm and fair, now seemed riddled with manipulation. When arrested, Pierce didn't protest. He looked exhausted, hollow. "I thought I was the last honest man in the room," he said softly. "But who was keeping me honest?" The press conference came on a Tuesday morning. There was no podium, no grand announcement, just a folding table, a modest mic, and Marcus Bell tired but unwavering. He didn't speak like a man claiming victory. Instead, he spoke like someone who had seen too much to celebrate. "I want to thank the ones whose names won't appear in any articles," he said, voice low but firm. "Those who never made the headlines, never sat on stage. Because it's their quiet choices, their sleepless nights that helped us get here." He paused, looked down for a moment, then added, "If justice is still possible, it's because someone somewhere chose to act while the rest stayed comfortable. Justice isn't free, and it sure as hell isn't easy." That afternoon, as the wind picked up and crowds thinned, Zara ran to her uncle outside the courthouse. She wasn't crying this time. She wasn't confused or scared. She was glowing. Without a word, she handed Malik a folded piece of paper. He opened it slowly. It was a drawing, pencil on plain white, him standing tall in his familiar coat. But this time, he was smiling. "I drew you again," Zara said softly, her little fingers tightening around his. "Only this time I gave you a smile. Because now you can." Malik looked at the sketch for a long moment. Then he looked at her. He didn't say much, just nodded. But something in his eyes changed just for a second. A softening, a breath. Later that night, he'd tuck that paper into a file that no one else would see. Between the lines of redacted documents and sealed testimonies, it was the only truth he needed to keep. Because in a world full of hidden agendas and buried truths, Sometimes the most powerful justice doesn't come from a gavel or a courtroom. Sometimes it comes from a child's drawing, from a life that got to keep growing, and from the silent understanding that real justice, true justice, always demands a price. A price paid not by those who seek glory, but by those willing to disappear for the right reason. Malik Turner never asked for applause. He asked for change, and that in the end is exactly what he delivered. Malik didn't tell anyone he was leaving. There were no goodbyes, no press, no farewell dinners, no ceremony to mark the man who'd unmasked a city's rot. Just a rented car, a quiet highway, and a silence that fit him like a second skin. All he left behind was a single envelope tucked inside the mailbox outside Denise's home. It wasn't addressed formally, just two names in his neat, deliberate handwriting, Zara and Denise. Denise read it first, her fingers trembling only once as she unfolded the pages. Then she passed it to her daughter. Tell the truth. Malik had written, even if your voice shakes, because one day someone will hear it and stand beside you. That's how change begins, not loud, not perfect, but real. Zara didn't cry, not this time. Instead, she began drawing. She spent weeks, months, even capturing faces in pencil and charcoal. Not just Malik's, not just Alvarez or Marcus, but faces of those she met in courtrooms, in parks, at rallies. Some scared, some strong, all still fighting. And when the city reopened the Civic Center downtown, she asked for a wall. They gave her a gallery. The exhibit opened with a simple name, Faces of Justice. People came. They stood in silence, staring at sketches of men and women they might have passed on the street, people who once had no voice. And in one corner, drawn in delicate strokes, was a man in a long coat with eyes that saw too much. This time his smile was barely there, but it was enough. Not far from the gallery, Marcus Bell sat in a newly rented office space. It wasn't fancy, but it was his. He'd just secured the first round of funding for a nonprofit called ClearPath, a legal organization dedicated to reviewing wrongful convictions, police misconduct, and system failures. A small team, but determined. His first call had been to Alvarez. Still think you weren't meant for this, he'd teased. She'd only smiled. I was meant to keep trying. And they did. They reopened 2 more cases that month. Cleared one man after 14 years behind bars. Another after 6. No press. No glory. Just long nights, coffee, and stubborn hope. Then one morning a message arrived, encrypted as always. Morrison's voice played through Marcus's secure line. Calm, precise. They're shifting operations, she said. Chicago this time. Embedded corruption across precinct lines. Cartel-linked assets already in motion. We need someone with history. She didn't need to say his name. Marcus exhaled slowly. And far from the city, somewhere no one thought to look, Malik read the same words on a flickering screen. He stared at them for a long while. Then he reached for his coat, folded the letter from Zara into the inner pocket, and walked out the door. No one saw him leave, but a neighbor would later recall the faint sound of footsteps, steady, unhurried, fading into the morning mist. Because that was Malik Turner's way. He didn't stay for applause. He didn't wait to be remembered. He just kept moving forward, not to fix the system, but to remind it that it could be watched. That someone was watching. And maybe that was the lesson all along. The system wasn't broken. It was designed that way. But sometimes, design fails to account for conscience. And in those rare moments when someone refuses to play along, refuses to be quiet, something shifts. It doesn't happen all at once. It doesn't happen loudly, but it happens. Because silence, when used by the right person, can echo louder than any headline. And somewhere out there, Malik Turner was already listening for the next signal. Waiting for the next crack in the armor. Ready. Watching. Still invisible. Still dangerous. Still, just a quiet man trying to set something right. Sometimes justice doesn't come crashing in with lights and sirens. Sometimes it moves quietly through a child's courage, a silent witness, or a man who chooses not to run but to stand. This story reminds us that change often begins in the shadows with those who refuse to stay silent, even when the cost is high. Malik's journey isn't just about exposing a broken system. It's about the quiet strength it takes to hold on to truth when the world calls you a lie. If this story moved you, please take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe to Mr. Max Stories for more powerful, real-feeling narratives like this one. Your support means the world to us. Every click, every comment, every share, it's what keeps us going and allows us to bring you stories that matter. At Mr. Max Stories, we believe memory is power, and the voices we remember shape the world we choose to build. Thanks for being part of that with us.